Good morning, everybody. It is 10 a.m. and so we want to get started promptly here. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, and so happy to have you. Glad you took time out of your day to join us. We have a variety of great topics to go over today. Already see a lot more cameras. We appreciate that. It really helps out, and we enjoy the meeting more when we can see you and see your faces, and so we appreciate that. And so same rules as always. We have the chat going. We'll try to answer questions as you submit them there, or at the end, we will have a Q&A where you can voice those questions if you would like. And so with all that, we're going to turn it over to Brian and get going.
Thanks, Les. Good morning, everybody. So this is going to be our last summer webinar. We are taking the next month off because we're coming out in October to see everybody personally. So we're going to be doing our in-person shade tree meetings around the state in October. So there'll be no webinar next month and the month of October because we'll be going from district to district and seeing everybody. So looking forward to that. And then we'll resume the webinars after that at some point to be determined. The structure of the in-person, we're going to go back to how we originally used to do it, where we meet with everyone in the morning, and then we'll let the contractors and industry go for the afternoon, and we'll meet with our in-house district staff in the afternoons. And we will be providing lunch for those events as well. So looking forward to those. Like Les said, we have a lot to talk about today. We're just going to kick that off, and just keep in mind that we have the in-person meetings coming up. So we're going to be requesting questions, topics, anything you want us to talk about or you want us to go over during that in-person. So we'll give you, plenty of time to get ready for that and to submit those. So let's get it started. Matt, looks like you're first.
All right. Well, good morning. So wanted to go over the construction memo that was recently sent out. We had a lot of questions, comments, just wanting to get some clarification. So let me share my screen. So of course, this is, somebody else is sharing. Yep, let's go. All right, thanks, Les. All right, so hopefully everybody can see my screen. So this was the construction memo that was sent out. And of course, we have a process in place now. We're doing RFCOs. That is still the same process. Nothing has changed with the RFCO. Contractor fills out the top part, project engineer reviews it, determines whether there's entitlement, cost, time, all that stuff, agree to that, send that on to the headquarters representative. They'll write up a response. Then that goes to Brian for approval and ultimately Chad for approval for the category ones. So with that in mind, the delegation of authority has been shifted to Brian and I for category one change orders. So that's what the intent of the memo was, is that you still have to have these user role approval levels. Otherwise, on the change order, it will say that you need a chief construction engineer approver or the chief engineer approver. So what this was meant to say was, at the chief construction engineer, I will be the approver that you select for that. And for the chief engineer level, you will select Brian for that. Not that we changed up any of the user approvals or anything like that. Another issue that had come up was the second part that kind of goes over the hierarchy for approval. And it started out with project engineer and then contractor. We got a lot of questions. Hey, did we change this? Because the way we've been doing it is contractor first, then project engineer. That's fine. The intent wasn't to change that. It was strictly, this is the EDSM. This is EDSM 3111. It's been in place for years. Of course, we did modify it back in October 24, but that was for the RFCO process. But this has been in here for years and years and years. We literally just took that listing, put it in a vertical format rather than the horizontal format. So project engineer was listed first, then contractor, so on and so forth. So wasn't to confuse anybody or to change that. order. Contractor can still be first on the change order approval. Project engineer can be second. It was strictly to say that once you get to the chief construction engineer, put me down as the approver, the construction engineer administrator. And then for the DOTD chief engineer, put the chief construction and materials engineer, Brian, down for that user and that specific line item. So for districts that I oversee, for districts 4, 5, 58, and 61, you will have me down as an approver twice. Because again, if you do not put these approval levels on here, you will get that red verbiage at the top of the change order report that says you need this approval level. So I know it's somewhat ridiculous because I approve it twice, but please keep that on there for now. And with that, if there's any questions about that still, let me know.
All right, thanks, Matt. We have an update on our new spec book. Sarah Balmer is going to talk a little bit about that.
All right, so the chief wanted us to notify everybody that the spec book, new spec book will be made effective. The 2026 spec book will be made effective on January 26th lettings. And right now we have a draft available on our internal website, and it will be made available. The draft will also be made available on our outside website in the near future. So just look out for that.
Yeah, that was the main thing, is that the new spec book will be available for everyone to view in a draft format starting January. That will be the specification book for all projects letting. Sarah, you also have the next topic, RFCOs.
All right. Let's try to share my screen. A lot of people, when they're creating their RFCO document in DocuSign, or I think some people are going to the templates and going to like the folder and try to select their RFCO document and to make the change you're copying or whatnot. I just wanted to make people aware that in the instructions, it's pretty simple. You don't have to do that. How you should do it, or how you should utilize the template, would be from the home tab, and you would just click start envelopes and then use the template. And then it just tells you, hey, which one do you want to use? And then you select whichever one I've shared with you. And then you add that selection and it'll pull up the template. And obviously everything is already kind of pre-made. You're just entering in contractor's name if you want the contractor to fill out, project engineer. That way you're not modifying the templates, because I'm finding out I'm having to reset these templates because people are actually going in and modifying it, and then other people are seeing that and giving me calls. So just want to make y'all aware that there's a way to utilize the template without changing it.
I'm sure there's probably some questions about that, and we'll have time either in the chat or at the end of this to go over those. Next topic up is HaulHub, and Patrick's going to talk to us about that.
Morning, everyone. Just a few updates. If you hadn't been joining the monthly web sessions for e-construction, HaulHub has now set up a dedicated field for the lot identifier. So that's something you can actually sort your reports on, and it actually shows in the ticket display. In addition, the digital stationing, they've been moving forward. So instead of having to require that land XML file, they've set up a process where they can ingest directly from the .dgn file, the typical design file that our designers usually store the information in. So if anyone wants to continue piloting or pick up a new project with the digital stationing platform through HaulHub, please reach out and we'll hunt down your designers. If you can hunt down those designers and get that .dgn file, we can very easily get that set up for you and get it connected. It all runs through the same platform you're already using for e-ticketing. We also come to light that there was an oversight where when we put the spec update out for e-ticketing requirement in the February lettings, we forgot to include the statement in 501. So that is being amended as well. So moving forward, e-ticketing will be a requirement for 501 mixtures as well.
All right, next topic. I'm going to try to share screen. There we go. So this is part of the PowerPoint presentation that we had put together about a year ago, maybe a little longer, when we were meeting with everyone next door at the Capitol about paying within 30 days. So I had Patrick pull, and just for reference, this is what the law says about paying within 30 days. I put it up there. It'll be in the PowerPoint and in the webinar, so you guys can review it if you like. So each of these steps is kind of what I wanted to bring attention to. The end of the estimate period is when the clock starts. It's not when the estimate is generated. I just want to clarify that. So I put in some days here at each of those steps, 1 to 3, 1 to 3, 1 day for the PE to approve it after the contract, just to kind of come up with a number of days here until the check gets cut. You can see that at the bottom. 17 days is that's the earliest it can happen. This is a cumulative total of all of each of these steps, and we just stacked them one on top of the other. And then we looked at each individual step. So this is, I think, where we can get the most bang for our buck is the period end date to when we actually are generating the date. Let me move this off my screen 1 second. All right, so the blue line at the bottom is less than 3 days. So we're only getting 30% of those estimates moved from the period end date to when we actually generate it within 3 days, only about 30% of the time. And if we roll through each of those other steps, and again, I'm referring to each of these steps at the top, whether that's the office manager generating it, the contractor approving it, the PE, compliance, headquarters construction, so forth. Each of those are doing pretty well when we look at the overall compilation of those totals, where this band at the bottom, this blue band, which is taking about averaging 10 to 12 days over the last 3 years. I think that's where we can make some improvement here, because if you look at all the others, this is from when the office manager does their approval from the generation. All of those are pretty much 90% and higher. And we're looking at 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 14. The contractor approval, again, the majority of those are happening at the higher end of that. The overall trend as we look through each of these, those slopes are getting better and better. We had a little faux pas here with compliance when a few of the people were not in the office, and you can see that dip. And again, that's 3 days in blue, 5 days in orange, gray within 7 days, and then the rest of them within 40 days, 95 to 100%. The biggest takeaway here is when you look at the overall average, and this is inclusive of all of those steps, all of those individuals, getting the estimate done. If you look at the bottom, within 30 days, back in 22, we were below 70%, and we've been trending. Now we're above 80%, somewhere close to about 83%, 84 actually. And the overall trend is better. And I was looking at this to see where can we make up that difference and get that from this point to 100%. And again, it's in this, from when the period ends to we generate the actual estimate. And again, that's on this graph, that's from day 0 to day 12. That's this whole blue area. And some of the things that keep that from happening are, getting our DWRs put in on a daily basis, reconciling those quantities weekly, and making sure that we're not waiting till the end of the estimate and then go in and try to actually figure out what we did that month, put everything in and reconcile, everything, take up to 2 weeks to do that. So I just want to make everyone aware of this. We're going to probably dig into it a little deeper, see if there's other areas or opportunities for improvement. If you have any questions about that, or if you see any impediments to that, reach out to us at our team. I talked to a couple of project engineers. They said that the biggest thing, or at least a couple that I talked to, said the biggest issue is in each step of this during the estimate, there's no automated notice. Like when you do a change order, each level gets a notice via email. So I would encourage each person, as they approve their step, that you manually send an email to the next person to let them know that it's ready and that it's waiting on them. And we try to improve these times. Again, what we're shooting for is to get all of these estimates done within 30 days, which is required by law. So a lot of information, a lot of data. You can take a look at it after the webinar. If you have any questions, reach out to me, give me a call. Again, it is required by state law. So we're doing better, but there's always room for improvement. So thank you. Next up is TCLB, Dallas Palmer, and I will stop share. Dallas, you're up.
All right. Share it now. All right, so I just wanted to kind of go over the TCLB again. We still get questions about how to use it, where to view the reports. So I just want to go through the process on how to get to it. So if y'all can see my screen, I went to Google, typed in DOTD, go to Office of Engineering, Construction, Work Zone, Traffic Control Logbook. All right, so that's how you get to the traffic control logbook. If you don't have it bookmarked, it's not too hard to get to. To view the reports, some people are still going to edit, view existing daily record, which sometimes does not give you all the information and is one report at a time. It's better to do a batch process. Click this button at the top right, print traffic control log report. Type in the first few digits of the project number. They'll come up. Select a date. And don't do more than 30 days because it'll take longer. And run the report. I did it a little bit earlier today and it took 35 seconds to download. It goes to the download folder. It'll pop up here once the download finishes. Then you can open up the packet of logs. You got a month worth of logs here. So another thing I kind of want to point out is some of these logs do not have a lot of narrative information, and this narrative information is important to explain what happened on the project from a traffic control perspective. I didn't pick this one because it was particularly good or bad. I just randomly picked this project because it's easy to remember. But looking through it, they noted that there were several issues and they resolved them. So this is the kind of information that I think we're kind of looking for if we get called into a lawsuit or called into court. It helps having accurate information in your log showing what happened, what was done to correct it, and it's more easy to defend that. So that's what I wanted to show on the traffic control log. The report I just did downloaded. Like I said before, it took about 30 something seconds, which seems like a long time, but it downloads and it's easier to view in this batch process than one at a time. And that when you're viewing one at a time, it doesn't always populate all the fields. It's not easy to navigate from a review perspective. So that's it for that topic. I think I have the next topic also. I don't need to share screen for that. So the next one, did we have a PowerPoint going? If not, the next one is the fiscal year end. So we just went through the fiscal year end for the state. And so it starts at the end of June. And sometime in the middle of July, we're able to start making payments again. But if there's changes to that project, we can't make payments until the fiscal year rollover takes place, which happened at the beginning of August, maybe the second week of August. We are now fully through that process. There may be one or two projects that didn't come over properly that we won't know until we actually get to those projects. But once that was released about a week ago, we started processing a bunch of estimates. So there probably is a bit of a backlog of estimates, but we've been making a bunch of payments the past week or so. So we should get back caught up. I also want to mention that the federal fiscal year happens at the end of September. And that is not as oppressive as the state fiscal year. We can still make payments if there's changes, if there's a change order needed to make the payment. We won't be able to make changes if there's federal money on the project. So for a week or two at the end of September, if the funding is not sufficient, we'll have to wait for that process to complete before we can add federal money to the project. So it's important to get the change orders in and get the money added before that period as well, which is in about a month. So that's it for that one.
All right. Thank you, Dallas. When we were reviewing the estimate pay times, we didn't see really any dips at those periods. So it seems like we're actively handling those pretty well. I did want to mention, I won't pull the data back up, but we were seeing some spikes in the data around Christmas time every year. So let's make sure that we're getting everything processed either ahead of time or get together with your contractor and do those reconciliations early if possible. Because every year around Christmas, we see a dip in getting estimates out on time. Just something else to add to that. So I think that wraps us up and gets us to materials with Chris Wascom. And Chris has got several things to talk about: concrete cylinders, maturity, density gauges. We're going to turn it over to Chris.
Good morning, everyone. So they have this listed as materials update, but I think we're kind of going to go backtrack a little bit and talk about a few subjects that we've discussed before. Les, you want to move us ahead to here we go. So this is primarily about curing chambers. I think we're still having some issues with curing chambers. I've been asked a few times, do I have to have curing chambers on my project? We just have Class M concrete. Is it needed for that? And the answer is yes. The specifications require curing chambers. The TR 226 was updated to also require the curing chambers. And really any structural concrete pours, you need a curing chamber. If you're making cylinders and we're basing pay off of cylinders, you have to have the chamber. If it's pavement or precast, we don't use chambers for that, but everything else you do. One of the things that we changed or that we updated in the TR was we also extended the time to get the cylinders, you cure them in the field in the chamber, and then we extended the time to 76 hours to get them to the lab for final curing. We did that. We worked with our industry partners. We were having issues getting the cylinders delivered on time to the lab. So we worked with our industry partners, and because we have the curing chamber, the cylinders should be able to stay in the field a little bit longer. It's still critical that you get them to the, hold on a second. It's still critical that we follow the TR and get them to the lab so they can be properly cured. So I know that you have basically 20 hours to 76 hours, and that should cover most situations. I know there may be some instances where if you're pouring on say a Thursday night, it's difficult to work within that window, but you need to make arrangements to, hold on. Sorry about that. Need to make arrangements with the district lab to have somebody either work later that Friday, or perhaps they come in early on Monday morning, or come in on Saturday morning, whatever that has to happen. But if you can't make those arrangements, then there needs to be a discussion with the contractor before the pour. Everybody needs to, I guess, understand what's going to happen and make an agreement. And we don't think that leaving the cylinders in the curing chamber for a few extra hours is going to make a big difference. But we just want to iron all that out ahead of time. We don't want to wait until we have low breaks and then we have a big issue that we have to deal with. So just if you have a situation where you can't meet that TR, make arrangements and have discussions ahead of time is our guidance. So with the changes to the TR, and then we've made a few changes in 901 recently. There's going to be a few more upcoming changes to kind of clarify how you I guess address issues with low breaks, with curing chamber, without curing chamber, all these things. But essentially, what we're going to say is if we have low breaks, we're going to do an investigation. If DOTD violated the TR 226, then we're going to allow coring for acceptance. If DOTD did not violate the TR, then we're going to go with the brakes. That's going to be how we determine pay, the cylinder brakes. If there's no chamber provided by the contractor, then we are not going to allow coring for acceptance. We may still do coring to determine if the concrete will remain in place, but we won't use the core results for acceptance. So that's essentially how we've decided to handle this. So, the question of what happens if you have no chamber, then you're not going to be allowed to core for acceptance. So Les, you can move to the next slide. So the next issue is about maturity curves and maturity method. We've gotten a lot of calls about that one, and there seems to be a lot of confusion out there. And the main point I want to get across is maturity method is required if you have high early strength concrete. So if you have a patching project and with lane closure restrictions, if you have the 902 item, you have to do maturity, or maturity is required. Even if you don't have the 902 item, you could have a situation where the project engineer and the contractor agree that based on the lane closure restrictions or whatever that is best for the project, you can use high early and use maturity. One of the issues with this is the whole trial batch curve development and mix approval process. So essentially, the contractor is responsible for performing all the trial batch, as well as developing the curve. Now, the contractor should invite the project engineer and the district lab engineer to witness that process and be involved in that process. But we don't want that. We don't want to delay that process. So if for whatever reason y'all can't get together and you can't coordinate, we don't have to be there, but we definitely want to be given the opportunity to be there. Then the district lab engineer would approve the mix design once all that trial batch information curve is all submitted. Now, one of the problems we've had, or one of the things I've heard from the districts, is sometimes the curve is there's not enough detail. They for whatever reason, maybe just a PDF of the curve was attached in LePave, and it's hard to determine, hard to use that to evaluate the process. So if you have that happen and you don't feel like the submittal is complete, then request for the missing information, request them to resubmit the missing information. So, I mean, the curve needs to have enough detail that we can use it. The axes of the curve need to be labeled properly with proper units, and the units that you're showing on the curve needs to match the units that the equipment is reporting as well. We've seen where some curves were submitted with temperatures in Fahrenheit, and the actual device is reporting in Celsius. And so we need everything to match. The curve should have values appropriately shown, and it would be best if it had grid lines. That way we can match up the corresponding values from the TTF value to the corresponding strength. And really the equation is very helpful to have. So, if these things are missing, ask them to submit it. Really and truly, it would be best if contractors, if you give us the spreadsheet, just attach the spreadsheet in LePave, just like, rather than a PDF, give us the actual spreadsheet. It's a whole lot. It would really expedite the whole process. The next big issue we have is with the verification of cylinders. So, or the verification process for the maturity curves. This seems to be the most confusing thing across the state. So, really, if you have a project that has maturity or has high strength concrete, we recommend that you call the Mat Lab. You could speak to me, speak to Amar, Patrick. You can call Patrick as well. But anybody, just reach out. There's a few people out across the districts that have some experience with this now. They can probably help. But if you have questions, just call the Mat Lab for sure. But some I guess guidance on the verification process. So you're going to verify the first pour, and then the frequency. I think we got it set at every 1,000 square yards after that. So in order to verify, you need 3 cylinders, a set of cylinders, and then you need a 4th cylinder with a sensor in it. And please don't just drop the sensor in the bottom of the cylinder. It needs to be in the middle. So take care when you make that cylinder. But those 4 cylinders need to be cured together. They need to be treated as a set. They need to be placed in the same ice chest. They need to be transported together. They need to stay together. And those verification cylinders are not the same as early breaks. Those are only to be used to verify the curve. So the lane opening should be based off the TTF value of the sensor in the patch and not the sensor that's in that 4th cylinder. So essentially, you're going to break those 3 cylinders in quick succession. You're going to compare to the TTF value that came from the 4th cylinder, the one that had the sensor in it. And then you're going to go and look at the curve and make sure that matches up. And if it's no less than 10% lower or no more than 10% lower than the value predicted by the curve, then the curve verifies and you're good to go. The lane opening itself, you need 2,000 PSI to open the lane. And that is based off of the TTF value from the sensor in the patch, not based off of the early, the verification breaks and not based off of that fourth cylinder. So that's apples and oranges. So we just need to get that clear that, you know, the verification cylinders do not have to reach 2000 PSI to open the lane. I mean, they could be 800 PSI as long as it matches what that fourth sensor predicted. So lane opening is based off of the sensor in the patch. And like I said, if you have questions, just please contact the MATLAB. It can be, it's completely different than how we traditionally have considered early breaks. And we get that, but as long as the curve verifies, then it is a good predictor of the strength of the concrete in the patch. And the reason for that is the high early concrete needs that heat from that mass of concrete in the patch. The cylinders are not going to generate the same amount of heat, so they're not going to gain strength at the same rate as the actual patch does. Let's see. So one other thing, the timeliness of the verification is important. It's not necessarily required that verification happens prior to lane opening. So like if you've got, say you got to get the lane open by 5 a.m. or whatever it is, if you can make arrangements and have the lab, you know, have the people show up at the lab to do that prior to 5 a.m., that's great. But if you can't, you can still open the lane based off of the TTF value put in the in the patch of the sensor that was placed in the patch. And then you just need to verify, you need to do your verification within the TTF data set that's provided on the curve. So you can't wait a couple days and be off the curve and try to validate. You need to be within the data set that's included, you know, bracketed by that data set. I think that's about it for maturity. So, but if you do have any questions, we have some guidelines that we're trying to put together. We're trying to, I guess, make it more clear and make it, you know, we had some basic guidelines. We're adding some information to that. And we are updating the QA manual, and we plan to put all this in the QA manual. So in the future, hopefully this is a lot more clear for people. But if you have a project coming up, please contact us if you need help. Okay. All right, Les, move us to the next one. Okay, so one of the things that I guess we've struggled with recently is the age of our density gauges. I think a lot of offices out there are using gauges that are 30, 35 years old. And Brian tasked me with trying to figure out a plan to upgrade those. And essentially it boils down to money. You know, we have about 105 or 106 gauges out there. Replacing them all is, we can't afford to replace them all, but we are going to gradually replace them. So we bought 10 new ones recently. The company that bid on this, a new company, or a different brand. It's Instratech. It's very similar to the Troxler gauge, but it's a little bit different. It's green instead of yellow. That's the main difference. But we're gonna, rather than, it's not an issue with the number of gauges. We have plenty. It's just the condition of them. So we're gonna trade in those older gauges as we replace, you know, get new ones. We're gonna trade in the older ones. So we had to pick the 10 that we were going to trade in, and that was based off of, you know, age, condition, you know, how often we've had to work on those 10. Melinda keeps good records on that stuff. So those of you that had those 10, I think you've probably already been contacted to bring them into the MATLAB so we can swap them out with the, you know, get the Instratech folks. They're going to take them off our hands and go dispose of them. That way we don't have to deal with them. There's a lot of regulations involved with that. That was part of the bid that went out. And we've heard from some of y'all that, you know, the one that we chose to, I guess, decommission, that was the better one. Of, you know, you had 2 in your office and that was the better one. And My suspicion is a lot of that is about brand preferences. I know the Humboldts work a little differently than the Troxlers, and people get accustomed to one type of gauge and they don't like the other one. So we're kind of set on those 10. We're not going to be able to change that. But what we are going to do is we're going to redistribute the gauges based off the workload. What we've come to realize is there are some PE offices that may have 3 gauges and they're not really that busy. Maybe they were busy in the past, but now they're not, and they haven't really done a lot of taken a lot of density tests, at least haven't reported a lot in Site Manager. And there's some offices that might have 1 gauge that are extremely busy. So we're going to kind of redistribute the gauges based off of workload. And so if you have an old gauge that you need to trade in, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a new one, but we're going to try to make sure everybody has 2 gauges in their office. I think we have enough to do that. And if you have a brand preference, we will do our best to accommodate that. If your office really, really likes, say, the Humboldt, I know there's a couple out there that do, then we may try to get you 2 Humboldts, where another office may like Troxlers, we'll get them 2 Troxlers, or so on and so forth. So we'll work with y'all and try to figure that out. But don't be surprised if in the near future, we actually take one. If you have 3, we come get one and bring it to somebody else. So wanted to make y'all aware of that. And that is pretty much all I've got, Les.
All right. Appreciate it, Chris. So I think that's all of our topics that we were going to discuss. So we can, we're a little early, but we can open it up for questions. We got through that a little faster than I thought we would.
One thing we would like is contractors, district personnel for the October meetings. If there are specific topics that you'd like for us to go over, make sure you get those turned into us. Districts, if there's a district specific topic that y'all are seeing, not necessarily an overarching statewide issue, but just specific to your area, let us know. Contractors, if you're seeing something statewide, get those turned into us so that we can discuss that with the larger group and make sure we're addressing those concerns.
Yeah. And I saw Reldon was on the call. We'll be reaching out to that focus group again, Reldon. Put a list of questions together. We'll go through you to get that list as well through AGC.
There's 2 questions in the chat. One, is there an update? Oh, Matt already answered it. No update on the reorg, and any update on the Falcon question committee?
I've also haven't heard anything else on the Falcon revisions that have been proposed. We can certainly get with the contracts group and see what the plan is moving forward, but hadn't heard any updates on that.
Yeah, I think there's a staff meeting today on the 3rd floor, and there's going to be an Office of Engineering staff meeting tomorrow to kind of go over what they talk about today. So if we have any updates after that, we'll try to keep everyone updated. As soon as we find out any information, we'll share it with you guys.
Hey, Brian, with the new tax law, exemption law that came out for July 1st, is that going to be something we start putting in the proposal? And how's that going to be handled?
Honestly, Gerald, I don't know how it's going to be handled just yet. There's a lot of changes that were made, and we're still waiting for feedback on that.
Okay, thanks.
My understanding is once we start providing that, I think legal is trying to put some stuff together, but it will be up to the contractors to contact the Department of Revenue to get whatever the certificate is that says, yes, for this project, I'm a tax exempt entity, in connection with the state for this project. And that's what you'll end up presenting to your vendors and that sort of thing. But the legal is still trying to iron out that information, I do believe.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, but we're not sure if that's what we're doing.
There's another question, kind of similar to the other ones. Any updates on construction inspector pay increases?
So I
Probably.
believe that was passed by the Civil Service Commission. Unfortunately, I believe they did it as a pay adjustment and not a reallocation. So I think that's still up in the air. I'm not exactly certain what the ultimate status will be. They were creating the construction inspector position, but I don't know that existing technicians that move over to the inspector will get an increase unless they do not meet the minimum of the new pay level.
Hey, Mac, you want me to speak to it a little bit?
Sure.
All right, it's Chad. So, Matt's correct. It's job correction, not reallocation, or like whatever one doesn't come with money, it doesn't come with money. One of the reasons it took as long as it did to get through was because Ms. Barbara here at headquarters was seeing if there was a way to budget so we could give something to the people that wouldn't get a raise, and unfortunately, no money came with it. So the only change that we're going to have, your existing Tech 5s will get, and I'll get to the construction inspector in a second, but if somebody's an existing Tech 5, they currently get $1 an hour in premium pay. That's going to go up to $2 an hour in premium pay. Any engineer Tech 7 is currently getting 0, and they will be getting $1 an hour in premium pay. I know that doesn't make many people happy. It is something. We were able to eke that out. Another thing, so we'll talk about construction inspector. So it's going to be construction inspector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then construction inspector supervisor. So the current engineering technicians have 6 levels, and the new construction inspector will have 6 levels as well. And so, like somebody said, that will go in effect on September the 15th. All the paperwork's being processed now to make all that happen. And September 15th, we're hoping it's going to be a smooth transition. Anytime you move this many employees, job titles and pay levels and everything else, I'm sure there's going to be a mistake. It's inevitable. So when those come up, we just notify HR and we can start getting that corrected. Any other questions on that specifically, the engineering technician changes?
Someone asked, will the construction inspector still get the premium pay that the engineer techs get?
Yes, they will. Everything I wrote the memo on our end. We sent it to civil service. That will get transitioned over. They call it crossover. So if you're currently getting $2 an hour, you're going to get $2 an hour. If you're a Tech 5 now, when you become a construction inspector 5, you're going to be getting $2 as well instead of 1. And the engineering technician 7 will be getting a construction inspector supervisor will be getting $1.
Okay, and then will the construction inspector 5 be included in the CPG?
No, I did try. I tried to slip that in there, and they saw through it and slapped it down.
All right, thank you for those answers. We have a different question. How should we handle higherly strength concrete if the 4 cylinders brought to the lab break below the required 10%, but the monitor and the roadway is showing it meets the required 2000 PSI for the opening and is the only higherly strength pour on the project?
So I'll take that one, I guess. So let me just try to clarify. I guess what you're saying is it did not verify. Like you did everything per the way the guidelines that we've laid out, and it just didn't verify. Well, you should have acceptance cylinders, because you remember the verification or the maturity is only used for the early opening. We're still doing acceptance based off of acceptance cylinders. So for pay, you're still going to have that to fall back on. Basically, if it's only 1 pour and there's no addition, no subsequent pours, Well, it's all said and done. It doesn't matter. You've apparently you've already opened the lanes, so we're not going to go back and close the lanes. Or you should have already opened the lanes based on what the TTF in the patch said. You basically make the assumption that the curve will validate on that first night, and you open lanes based off of that. If there's some problem with the patches, say you have just a horrible pour and something was wrong and the patches are cracking or they just didn't cure. I mean, you have to make that judgment call out there. If you're in the field and I mean it's obvious that look, this concrete did not set up, then we don't want a dangerous situation. You're going to have to wait until they set up, but to open the lane. But if everything appeared to be fine, you opened it, and then then you realize, well, guess what? It didn't validate, or the curve didn't verify. That would only affect subsequent pours. So if the patches are not damaged, there's no cracks, everything looks to be right, and then your accepted cylinders pass, the 28-day cylinders pass, then you pay it as per the 901 spec.
And I would add, if there's a question, if you're not approaching that time limit of your lane opening requirement, give it another 30 minutes. A little extra time helps it gain strength. That's kind of that judgment call. If you're just below that 10%, just give it another 30 minutes and your patch will be fine.
Yes, that's good advice.
All right, there's another question in the chat. I've got a white topping that is using flexural strength. There's no mention of acceptance beams, and we are using maturity method. What would I do in the same situation if the verification doesn't verify?
Can you repeat the first half of that? What was it about?
It says I've got a white topping that is using flexural strength. There's no mention of acceptance beams, and we're using maturity method. What would I do in the same situation if the verification doesn't verify?
It's a white topping project. I'll left the project out.
Thanks, Matt.
But what's the specified acceptance criteria on the project?
Yeah, I mean, so look, some of those specifications can get kind of detailed and very specific to that project. So I think it'd be best if you ask that question directly. Send us your project information. We can pull up your contract and see what it says. But essentially, my advice would be the same. If you have one pour, I'm not suggesting that we eliminate the verification process, because that could be used to determine if that mix is allowed to be used on any other projects. But essentially, that first pour, you're making the assumption that everything's going to verify, and you open it to traffic based on the TTF, the sensors in the patch or in the roadway. Don't base it. It's not like traditional where we're looking for early breaks, and it's like, oh, the early breaks came in at, like I said earlier, 800. We got to wait until we get 2000 on these early breaks. No, because they're not going to generate the same amount of heat. They're not going to gain strength the same. But for your specific project, we need to look at what are the acceptance requirements.
Anything else in the chat?
There's a question about number of positions in a gang, or is it unlimited?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so right now we're not changing that calculation. I think it's 2 techs per tech 5. If we ever get to the point where we have enough experienced technicians where that's an issue, that we got too many tech 4s that are eligible for 5s, be busy. But at the point right now, we're going to go. I didn't want to tackle that in this role, but we're monitoring that situation.
Thanks, Chad. I think that was it in the chat.
We've got a few minutes left. Any other questions? While we're thinking about those, just a reminder that we're not having a webinar next month or the following month. But in October, we're going to be coming out to the districts and meeting with everybody in person. Well, hearing no additional questions, I appreciate everybody's taking the time to get on the call and appreciate all the questions and the back and forth. So thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.